important for us to consistently keep speaking and also making sure that the rights that are being increasingly eroded are being challenged, that we continue to speak and also challenge. I'm actually going to start my statement with a quote with lawyer Vrinda Grover, who spoke earlier today in the panel. I'm quoting her. UAPA has become a convenient tool to target activists, religious and ethnic minorities, and to spawn fear among people to manufacture a rationale for an authoritarian state to act with impunity. And I think what is really important in my statement, one thing that I do want all of you to take away from my statement is to understand that this is an authoritarian state that acts with impunity. India continues to be referred to as the world's largest democracy. However, it is now a state that uses both authoritarian means and ends to silence dissent. This year, the US-based nonprofit Freedom House downgraded India from a free democracy to a partially free democracy. The Sweden-based Freedom Institute said that India has become an electoral autocracy, and Democracy Index, published by the Economist Intelligence Unit, described India as a flawed democracy. It's imperative that we understand what's happening in India, not just as an aberration, but carefully calibrated acts of authoritarian regime. So also it's important for us to see India as a national security carceral state that is waging a war against its own people. Authoritarian regimes effectively use and mobilize existing laws, institutions, and importantly, the police and the judiciary to criminalize dissent and target those who continue to challenge the current regime and its various affiliates. And I think you've already heard some wonderful examples of this with both our previous speakers. Of course, we all understand that the UAPA is a lawless law. With only 2% convictions, these India's terror laws and sedition laws are a political weapon to silence activists, target students, demonize Muslims, Kashmiris, and any resisting population as terrorists. For example, recently, 127 Indian Muslims charged with terror were acquitted after 19 years. The law, as rightly pointed before, used disproportionately to target Dalit and Bahujan activists and those in Adivasi communities, many who continue to fight the illegal and unconstitutional encroachment of their lands. The extraordinarily wide definition of the term terrorist under the UAPA is being used by police across the country as an invitation to categorize all acts, even the act of turning up to protest, as a terror offense. Barring some exceptions, judges have routinely upheld the legal validity of these draconian laws to a point where now we are celebrating the judges for just simply turning up and sometimes just doing their job. In recent years, of course, scores of journalists, activists, students have been booked under the UAPA, leading to widespread criticism. But that's all there is. We have criticism, but the law has remained. Also, according to the recent data shared by the Indian Home Ministry in the Parliament, again, we know that India doesn't keep data well. So even whatever data that we have, I'm assuming that this is a very small number, is that there was a 72% increase in the number of arrests made under UAPA in 2019 compared to the number made in 2015. The government data also shows that 5,922 people were arrested under the law between 2016 and 19, and only 132 were convicted, which again goes back to our less than 2% conviction rates. The goal, of course, is to be unkind and cruel, unjust, and above all means use all the means necessary, whether it's legal, procedural, political, to not only destroy dissent, but also weaponize the very constitution against the people it's meant to protect. Once the democratic Indian state has now been undermined, eroded, and now close to being dismantled. And I think that's very important. The idea that the systems are being dismantled every single day. When the state treats its citizens as an existential threat, that state ceases to be a democracy. And I think it's very important for us to name the beast if we are to fight the beast. Before I conclude, I'm going to use two case studies and examples. Of course, lawyer Vrinda Grover has already talked about the BK16 and now BK15 political prisoners. I'm going to very briefly speak about Suchitra Vijayan, who was an ex-Congress councillor and she was a local politician. She was, of course, like many, many others, actively involved in the protests against the new citizenship law in the fall of 2019. And while the protests were happening, the streets of India saw unexpected amount of people coming in. Shaheen Bagh became a center of hope. Soon after, you saw people like Kapil Mishra use hate speech and weaponize hate speech as a way to incite violence. And soon the Delhi pogrom happened, and then she was arrested on 26th of February while the pogrom raged in Northeast Delhi that claimed over 53 lives, 2/3 of whom were Muslims. Initially, she was charged with attempted murder, a charge that the judge found debatable and granted her bail. However, on the 21st of March, she was arrested again for conspiring in the Northeast Delhi case, the violence case again. All the accused in this FIR have been charged in the UAPA, and it's also, again, impossible to get bail on all of this. Ishrat has completed over 500 days in jail, and her family and her lawyers have been relentlessly trying to build cases and gather evidence. And what's really interesting in Ishrat's case is that one of the biggest problems that the lawyers and the family are facing is gathering evidence, because the Delhi police has been going around destroying several CCTV cameras in the areas that could actually acquit Ishrat. And there are also videos of the police going around destroying the CCTV. Of course, there's also Umar Khalid. It's also Umar Khalid's birthday today. Umar Khalid turns 34 inside prison. He's a human rights activist, a former research scholar at Jawaharlal Nehru University, and a vocal critique of the Indian government's anti-minority policies. He was arrested on the 13th of September 2020. Again, Khalid believed that the CAA and NRC were not only unconstitutional laws, but it was an attempt to institutionalize the Hindu Rashtra and erode the constitution. He attended numerous protests between December 2019 and February 2020, and he delivered a speech. He delivered various speeches at various protest sites. And on the 17th of February, he delivered a speech in Amaravati, and then BJP leaders and right-wing media houses shared his speech, edited out without context, where he's asking people to come and protest, which was again interpreted as being him asking people to come and cause violence. Following such claims, he was arrested. He's been, again, there's no real evidence. There have been various charges filed against him. Again, under UAPA, there's a claim that he was planning a big blast. Again, if you read the charge sheet, it just sounds, I don't know what to call it. It's not dystopian, it's not Kafkaesque, it's something else altogether. I think we've also lost the real language to really explain what's going on the ground. What we've also seen in all of this is that young boys from these communities were also later picked up and forced by the Delhi police to actually give evidence against Omar. I'm going to finish with a statement that Omar made just before he was arrested. As he says, do not be afraid, speak up against injustice, ask for the release of those who are being implicated in false cases, and raise your voice against every kind of tyranny. Thank you so much.